Within the last, I think, 2 hours, Roseanne was canceled after the titular or title actor slash character decided to write a tweet making a disparaging remark toward former Obama administration official Valerie Jarrett. And there has been an outpour of support for the decision by ABC to remove her program. Um, I, for one, have very mixed feelings. I actually lean more toward keeping it, but I'll try to explain my point as things go. Let me say hello to Envoy. So, we all have heard of the First Amendment. We all know what freedom of speech is. We all know that people write things on Twitter all the time that are, not politically correct, such as our current American president. And part of freedom of speech, the reason Envoy was because of what she said about Valerie Jarrett. But go look it up. I don't want to bother even repeating it, just because I will fully concede it is a racial remark. But you know, it, here's my thing. One person, and look, whether they're the title actor or the extravaganza, they're still an individual. A person who's part of a staff of both actors and writers of this entire program says something that people don't like, and then all of a sudden everyone is now out of a job. That's the part that gets me. Yeah, I don't understand it either. No, they have this mentality that if one person screws things up, then it's everybody has to suffer and pay for that comment. And I'm already picturing because you know what's coming. You're gonna have TYT covering this. You're gonna have Secular Talk covering this. You're gonna have all these different liberal networks, Fox News, whatever. Even them now, saying, "Oh, what a great job fighting against the racist comments made by the host, or rather the lead actor of this show, Sports Brotherhood." She was talking about Valerie Jarrett. Anyways, they're going to just praise this move, but then I'm going to think back, especially with TYT. Weren't you guys the same people that were saying that the woman who was dancing on the grave of Barbara Bush was should be allowed to retain her position because she has the freedom of speech to talk about how someone is racist, even though you can't find anything she said about any group whatsoever? Let me say hello to Dirk. So I got a little confused. I didn't understand the hypocrisy there. But again, it goes back to this idea that freedom of speech only is applicable when it's things that I like. Um, Let me say hello to VVS. That's crazy how we hold celebrities to a higher standard than our president. Well, a lot of people have actually tried to go after Trump for various comments he's made. That's why you have these impeachment talks, and they recognize the futility of their moves toward him. So what they try to do is get back at those who are smaller down, and they can go after. It's pretty. Let me explain what it is, VVS. I know you probably do get this, but I want to clarify it. It's like a one of those pyramids. They have like the food table where they have the person at the top, someone at the bottom. The ones at the top are the pinnacle, the president, Trump and other elected officials that they usually can't touch, or when they try to touch, they get screwed around with. You saw that the House had that vote where I think only 50 out of 400 people actually tried to get a vote to get him impeached. So they know they can't mess with him. So what they do is go after other people who have similar controversial remarks the second they can do something. If she hadn't made this comment, that show might have made it to its fifth, sixth, or seventh season, because we're so willing to just pounce on anything anyone does. And, I get to a point where I get almost disgusted because they knew they couldn't say, "Oh, we're going to cancel your show because you like Trump or you claim to be a fan of his." So we're going to wait for you to say something that is, as Envoy just said right here, outlandish, and then pounce on you. Okay, Envoy says, well, to be fair, it was an outlandish comment. How do you expect to make a comment? Those annoying phone calls. Okay, let me respond to Envoy. How do you expect to make a comment comparing? Uh, no, it wasn't about Obama, Envoy. So I'm just clarifying it was not about Obama. It was about a person who was in his administration. Uh, Sports says Trump's well connected and he's going for another four. That's what I've been saying. They can't touch him, so they go after smaller targets. They're kind of like those. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, you have these terrorists who call themselves hating the U.S., but they know that if they try anything over here, they'd get obliterated. So what they do is mess with hospitals and other institutions within their own country. They pick soft targets. Okay, Envoy's talking about Hulk Hogan. Dirk says a comedian made an awful joke, so they got canceled. Is that what happened? Yeah. And look, I just want to clarify. I'm not a viewer. I saw the original show several years ago. Um, I have not seen any of the reboot. So I want to clarify. This isn't me being some disgruntled fan who's come to voice his frustration with what's happened. It's the reverse of that. They want to single her out so you can look like the only one who thinks like that, knowing that's how they all think. I don't know about all, but it's more than just her. Again, all of these people who call themselves standing up for freedom of speech, I'm trying to figure out where they went because it really seems like the only time you can get someone to go, oh yeah, he should be able to say that, is if it's in line with whatever you're going for. Like I'm not even just talking about person to person, but these like news groups. Um, so for example, there are a lot of liberals who will get mad at someone like Alex Jones. And look, I'll clarify. I can't stand many of the what I would consider outrageous comments that are pro conspiracy and all that other nonsense that he's made. But even in him being able to say those things, you have to acknowledge he's still a notable figure. And it's gotten to the point where we actually had a journalist, I think it was Megan Kelly. She tried to interview him, and she was getting attacked for interviewing him, for supposedly giving him a platform. But it goes back to this thing where people don't want to accept the fact that when you have a world where there's celebrities in things of politics and music, all of these other fields, they're not all going to think the same, and some of them are occasionally going to say things that piss you off or annoy you. But the one thing you can always do is not tune in to whatever things they're doing or saying that you don't like. And I kind of have no sympathy for ABC, and if it does lose ratings, because she had made controversial comments in the past, before she was hired for another season of her series. So it's kind of like if I buy a car and it comes without a wheel, and I ask the guy, where'd the wheel go? Oh, well, it just disappears by itself. And so I buy the car, I'm driving this car, it's got its wheel for about 2 or 3 weeks. That I just put in, then the wheel disappears, and I go, oh man, I can't believe the guy would do this to me. But you knew what you were getting. Okay, Envoy says once you tweet something, if you have a following. Yeah, but again, my stance is that the people who called themselves sticking up for that woman who pounced on that on Bush's grave a couple of weeks ago are not going to say, hey, look, we don't agree with what was espoused by this person either, but we're going to allow them to express their freedom of speech, even if you don't like the joke, um, and just allow their thing to go. And the best way to boycott or protest them is to ignore them. But they want to hear that. Let's see here. I think VBS went to sleep. Okay, Envoy says that wouldn't work because ABC will receive a tremendous amount of backlash. Um, Networks have had backlash in the past. Do you not see what's going on with the NFL, where you had conservatives threatening to boycott the league over that kneeling? I just think companies and institutions have to take a chance when it comes to the people that they hire. And if we're gonna just fire people because they said something, it'd be different if I go out and I go and I don't know commit a crime or violate someone's rights by attacking them or putting my hands on them or doing something else that actually is of substantive value. But if it's over rhetoric, and again, it's not like she sat up there and said, I'm calling for the execution of everyone that's this or any of that. It's just a joke that I didn't think was that funny. Other people in here obviously don't think was funny, but nonetheless was still a comment that at its worst was a lame joke that can be seen as having, you know, racial overtones of it. I don't know. I compare the whole controversy to that of the Obama birther thing, where you had people who were saying it was racist for Trump to do that, and one of the defending comments was, if it's racist, why isn't he asking every African American person who holds office or just in general to do the same thing? So it's again one of those things where there's grounds to look. If she went on there and said every African American is whatever, okay, you have the validity to call that so prejudiced and ridiculous. But here I can't see it. A joke in poor taste. Again, I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I'm just telling you that from the standpoint of watching these people, because I try to follow news channels on YouTube, on watch some news on television, and it's done to get the reaction from the people who both get to be on the talking box and the people that get to be on your computer screen, and then seeing all of them stand up and defend the right of this professor to. And what was funny is that you had a lot of those same commenters who were defending that professor who said the thing about Bush. They were criticizing conservatives for the fact that they always say they're having their freedom of speech violated when they go and give a speech at Berkeley or some other institution and have people calling for them to be removed as a speaker or to have any ability to be validated with having their presence acknowledged and allowed to address a crowd at whatever place it is. So they were criticizing them for not sticking up for this professor's freedom of speech. But then here you go with this, and it's like, you guys really don't see the hypocrisy in that. It also reminds me of the, if you guys remember last year, the Kathy Griffin thing where she was holding that head that was designed to look like Trump's. You didn't have them talking about she should be ousted from all forms of media. No one was saying that. No one was saying, "Oh no, we need to get rid of Kathy Griffin. We need to scratch her name out, take away all of her different awards, act like that person was never a thought." Okay, Dirk says they pick and choose their battles. Well, they pick and choose their what they get mad about. So yeah, I guess so. I'm just phrasing it differently, but let me respond to Envoy. Like you said earlier, freedom of speech means freedom of speech dependent on if I like it or not. If VVS says true, there's always something going on. I'm not sure what he means by that. I think I respond to everyone. Um, it's a very scary, because see, people like to think, and I've tried to make this the case when I was talking about the those accusations of misconduct by all these different men, in the last, I think, 6 7 months. Um, the reason you have to be worried when you see things like this, where because someone said something, we're going to now destroy their means of income, and not only that, but we're going to mess up the careers of all the people who happen to be associated with them, is that it's so easy to say to yourself, that's just a famous person, not, they're not me, why should I have to worry? And then something on a much smaller scale could end up happening to you that is remarkably similar. Let's say Envoy one day decides to write a tweet where he says, I really can't stand Hillary. And then he's, goes back to his workplace, and his boss says, I'll have you know that I voted for Hillary not once, but twice during her 2008 and 2016 campaigns. Get out of here. And then not only is he screwed because now his means of income has been messed up over a comment he made, but also the people that he might have been supporting are now possibly jeopardized as well. It's so simple to say to yourself, oh well, I don't mind that they did this, so what, whatever. But I mean, I guarantee you, there comes a day where everyone is going to have that beam waved at them, that wave of just speculation and comments and innuendo, and you'll find yourself without many allies if you didn't align yourself with those who were, at the very least, not shown to have done anything that was, of actual substance, like, touching someone without their consent or another crime, uh, and it's but with the in reference to the allegations that are being made about people putting their hands on each other, it's the same thing like that, where you have a group that gets upset about comments, things that are being said of someone or by someone, and they destroy their lives over it. Who cares if it's true or not in the case of, allegations, and who cares if it's a violation of freedom of speech to, tell this person that they need to be erased from existence over a tweet. But yeah, if people can't get that, I don't know what to tell them. I think they'll get it when if it happens to them. And look, the more you allow this to go on, it will catch up to more and more people. Maybe it's not to you directly, but think about this. If you had one woman who came in here about 5, 6 months ago, back when the older Bush was getting accused of touching and feeling and all that other nonsense, and she was defending, these women go, oh man, they've been suppressed for months and years and yada yada yada. And I said to her, how are you going to feel if, God forbid, in 20, 30 years, your son is alleged by groups of women with no evidence whatsoever to have been, behind feeling on them, and he gets ousted from his job because the company doesn't feel like having the headache. His entire means of income and life destroyed because of what someone had to say about him. And look, just as right now with the people engaging me in this conversation, to give another example, how is VVS going to feel when his son Chad is, writing on his Twitter, and he goes, oh man, this I don't know, Hispanic person or Asian or whatever is shaped like a refrigerator, and his boss says, I don't think that was funny, and decides to oust him. And now, if let's pretend VVS's son is in the commission of paying for not only himself, but maybe a wife or some other person, then they're all screwed because of what one person said. That's why these decisions are so, they're not motivated by logic. Logic tells you, you know what she said was not, in my opinion, smart, but it wouldn't be smart to mess up the careers of people who had nothing to do with this. Ask yourself, as a coworker of that person, you go on the show for about a year, and then one day you wake up and you see on the headline your show's been canceled, and now you're out of a job again. See, logic would tell them, let's sit back and think about it. Let's figure out how we're going to address the careers of everybody else. No, the show had great viewership, Man of Leisure. It's just people, again, are going by emotion rather than logic. That's why they remove an entire program. And look, they could easily appease what I'm saying right here by making, I don't know, a separate show with the same actors. It's very simple. They have all these people at their disposal that they're deterring the lives of over what someone else said. Envoy says, well, Dirk, if you're an actor or something stupid to say, something like that, I feel sorry for you, but at times jokes are just that, jokes. That's my point, Envoy. Dirk says are even worse now, teachers. Even now, many that get into the limelight have people to show. Hey, you guys remember what happened with Cenk Uygur of TYT? Even though he makes comments I don't agree with, I still stood up for the fact that they called posts he made 20 years ago sexist. And we're talking about, oh, we need to oust you from the Justice Democrats while having Oprah be touted as a 2020 presidential Democratic, candidate. And she's shown to support the same Iraq war that, led to the deaths of thousands of people. But again, she gets to have a character arc where, oh, now I changed, and I'm reformed, and I'm a different person. But then, the man doesn't. You guys not see the hypocrisy? See, is anyone else saying anything? Over to me always appeared. I didn't know she had bone clothes on. For I had no idea. No, it's not about trust. It's about the fact that we're starting to create a world, and like people keep talking about, racism's more outward now. Like, no, it's more outward now. Is everybody getting so offended over every single thing that someone does? Like, ask yourself this: is it really that we have all of these rampant molester dudes running around, or is it just we have a lot of cases where we don't have evidence and people are coming forward and we assume the person's guilty just cause, and then it gets allowed to be legitimized with each new charge? When in reality, a lot of us, such as myself, are believing less with each new allegation that's being made. I don't buy it because they've given me no reason to. Like I said, the Weinstein stuff was believable because I forgot what her name. I don't even think they put her name on there. This actress recorded him trying to get her to go back to his little place with her, and it basically, admitting what he'd done or not denying it. So it all that at least seemed to have validity, and there were, different hints at that in the past. But all this other stuff with most of these other people, no, I don't know, man. That's just the way it is now. It's terrible too. I already told them what the new policy is. You can do that all you want, but we're gonna have disabled ratings after. Go on, keep doing it. It's like if you were to go and take a house and paint and say to yourself, "Let me get five guys. We're gonna paint the backside of their red," and then right after you do that, the guy just takes whatever the original color was, a big plate of it, and just smushes it all right there to where what you did like was never even seen. Basically, after its initial moments. All right. So if anyone else has anything else to say, I will see what happens. But yeah, it's a saga that has kept going and festering. And I've tried to not make it to where everything has the overtone of male versus female and all these other little patterns of gender, because truthfully you should be able to talk about these things and objectively look at them regardless of what your ethnicity or background is. um but I guess as someone who's followed this stuff for over a year now, this really hyper culture of just, oh, someone said this, let me do that. Oh, someone wrote this 20 years ago, let me ban them now, or give a reprisal at this point. It get, and then seeing people who agree with one part of that not agree to all of it. It gets to where you can't feel it anymore. It's like you're numb. Like you don't buy it after a while because you keep seeing people do the same thing over and over again when it comes to how they handle these, even if the variations are remarkably different. So you'll have a guy who wrote something that people who might lean toward liberal positions will say, "Oh, that's disgusting. That's racist, homophobic, whatever." And then you'll have a person who's who's liberals say something that conservatives don't like, and they'll be gone after by conservatives while having fellow liberals defend them. So you never can feel either side really is that truthful in their positions, because they keep flipping and reversing it depending on what the person is saying. Yeah, people get upset about everything now. So I would agree with that. Yeah, and I've tried to clarify comments. Well, I will take comments any day over actions, and that's kind of the world we live in now. A lot of the people who you would call racist back in the 30s and 40s, they weren't writing things on Twitter or other sites. They were going out and lynching people and having crosses being burned in front of houses, all actual acts of racial terrorism. And now it's just oh, he said this comment that I don't like. So say hello to Elliot. Old school says, with watching your other videos now, wow, just wow, such a shattered. We need to teach children to man up and stop being. Um, yeah, but you have to understand, it's not just the fact that people get upset about things. It's also that we give people who are bothered by the slightest of things a platform. So, for example, 20 years ago, if someone didn't like a show, they couldn't go on Facebook and decry it and say, "Oh, this is so disgusting," and I hope this program gets canceled, and hashtag ABC divest now. None of that. But because this actor says something you don't like, now all these people are out of jobs. Um, a lot of people that like that show now don't have something to watch, and it's being championed as the corporations making a bold move and standing up, but it's completely in line with a pattern of behavior that is detrimental to how things are going, how things truly should go. You see, if people wanted that off the air, the best way they could have done was encourage their friends and others who were so outraged by these comments, just don't watch it. Like, imagine that next season premieres and it's got 5 viewers. Man, that thing would have been gone after that. But because we pay so much attention to things that we call ourselves hating, um, we decide we legitimize it. Okay, old school says yes, definitely. It's the victimization which can be commonly seen in safe spaces and the censoring of media information. Envoy said it's funny that you've got more access to porn or external info and crit, but yet more offended now. We were in the Yeah, it's very backwards. You have. I think I've made my point now. So it's the bottom line is it's disturbing. I think they made the wrong move. People are going to hail this as some courageous act. When I feel it was more of a cop out to not deal with a headache, and I think it's another chapter in this saga of, oh no, we believe in freedom of speech, just don't say something we don't like. And it's proven itself to just spread across all forms of media and other realms. And it's a really dangerous thing because it says we have to subscribe to what could be considered monolithic thought. And the best way of protest for anything, and just something you call yourself not liking, is to leave it alone. To be upset with these conservative shows like Roseanne or these conservative commentators such as her, the best way to show your disdain for who that person is and what they are is to leave their ideology to its own devices. That Alex Jones interview that Megyn Kelly did a while back, that had all the networks expressing outrage, how dare she? The best thing they could have done to delegitimize him was not watch it, just let it air, turn the channel, and all they could report was, oh, no one wanted to hear his lunacy. That would have been the headline of the day. That people accepted the fact that there were different thinking individuals who sometimes said things you thought were insane, and they just left them alone. And it's been the case with what I've tried to say here, where prior to that national security advisor, Bolton, the one I don't like, because he's a warmonger, getting in office, I didn't watch any of his speeches. I didn't, go and look up news about him. I just stayed away from all of it because I knew that person was a figure I was not interested in and really had nothing nice to say about. But after he took office, I followed and watched his stuff so I could know what I could expect from this person who now has some level of power. Okay, Elliot says, I just looked up what this topic is about. Why would she make that would cause trouble? I think what it is that people get used to this idea that they can just say whatever they want without repercussion. I mean, I've had people sit next to me and talk about what physical acts they'd like to do to various public figures they don't like, and including, some that actually are in office and various means. So it's part of that behavior. Envoy says, what do you mean by leaving his/her ideology? Well, I mean that you don't actively seek it out. Like, for example, if Trump wasn't president, most of these conservative, not conservative, liberal, news networks and various other stations wouldn't, pay his comments the time of day. They wouldn't watch what he's doing. But there's a purpose behind doing it. They're interested in public policy, and he's in a position of power over that, or at least he should be. We already know the office of the presidency is, it's got its limitations. But I was saying that I was giving the Bolton example to say that's how it should be done. Where if the person is not in a position of power, just give them, do to them like how you would do to the plague. Avoid at all cost. So maybe that's explained what I was intending to convey. I don't know, you'll probably have to speculate some more on the meaning of my terms and whatnot. But to give another example, most of us wouldn't care about our governor if they weren't our governor. After the governor gets out of office, I don't look up that person's news. I don't try to see what they're doing. Tossed out. The only reason I bothered to even know anything about them in the first place is because they were in charge of public policy, something that governed my life, and that, at least in some instances, is proven to actually have benefiting factors if it's done right. Question, I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, so maybe it's terrible T isn't aware. When you do a stream on a phone, at least, I know on the computer it's different, the message will show up momentarily and then fade away. And I've oftentimes had it where I've had to scroll back up and just look through there. Good example right now, as I responded to that comment in full, it just disappeared. Now I can go and press on here and scroll up and look down. I'm getting ready to end the stream. If you want this question answered, you're more than welcome to send me a private message. See, right now it just disappeared. It's about 10 or 11 seconds and it just fades away. And I can scroll back and see these, but again, I'm ending. So thank you for watching. Stop, paying any serious consideration to things people say, for the most part anyway. And do not allow yourself to become tricked, because they're going to keep saying it to you. Oh, don't worry about that actor. They're just getting their show canceled because they said this really disgusting thing, and don't worry about that movie star because he's only getting his life destroyed because he just did this really nasty thing, even though we don't have any evidence. That is going. If you become anything of any noteworthiness, you are going to have charges, false claims, smears launched toward you, and it's going to become worse off of it being allowed on a national level or a higher level than yourself locally. So if some major star can get brought down by saying something somebody didn't like, or leaving, being alleged to have done something several decades ago with no proof. The same thing can happen to you, and that is not a laughing matter at all. I hope you guys recognize that. So thank you for participating. I'll have another stream tomorrow. Peace.